Hi, can you hear me? Why can I not hear them?
I can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay.
Now I can, yes. This is Lisa Shelby.
Okay.
I can hear.
I can hear you.
Hi, Carol.
How's that? Can you, oh, I should be able to hear me now.
Yep.
Oh, good. All right. Well, what's a Zoom meeting in the time of COVID without some technical difficulties? Thanks for being patient, everybody. We've officially set, I've done maybe a dozen of these meetings in the last few months, and you all have officially set the record for the highest attendance rate. So congratulations. I'm usually sitting here by myself with one or two other staff people from the town, and it's great to see such a large amount of participation from the community. So I know everybody's time is super valuable, so I'm going to get started. My name is Mark Leckington. I am the president of Leckington Advisors. We're a consulting company based in Trenton that works on CDBG, home, and ESG entitlement grants from the Department of HUD. We also spend a lot of time working on affordable housing issues, but designing programs and troubleshooting affordable housing projects and things like that. I was retained by the municipality a couple of months ago to help them access these funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I'm very happy to be here and to be a part of the project. So the CDB, oh, we got a couple more people that joined. Admit all. Just going to move some things around here so I don't miss anybody that joins the call while I'm talking. Not a lot of real estate left on my screen. Again, Mark Leckington, Leckington Advisors was retained to help the municipality prepare a plan to accept these funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We have a draft consolidated plan that's been made available on the town's website. The purpose of today's hearing is to kind of go through some of the highlights of that, talk a little bit about the background of the program, and most importantly, listen to any feedback or comments that we might have from residents, stakeholders, and other people of interest in this process. So if you all don't mind, I'm going to get started. The CDBG program has been around for a very, very long time. 1974, in fact, is when it started. But Princeton didn't become eligible until last year. And the key to its eligibility in the program, as most everybody could probably guess, was the merger of the two municipalities into a single municipality. It bumped up the population for Princeton to a level that is, and I have it quoted here, principal city of metropolitan statistic area. Not a great bumper sticker, but it is the status that has gotten you into the CDBG program. And it just basically means you've got a significant population in this region of the state. It's got three major sort of overriding goals, and they are to provide decent and suitable living environments, to provide decent housing and suitable living environments, expand economic opportunities, and for principally low and moderate income people. When I say principally, the real key is that the funding that we have available to us has to be spent to serve low and moderate income people, not exclusively, but a large percentage of it, 51% in fact. That's the test that we have to hit each year. So it doesn't mean that if you design a program that 100% of those participants in the program need to be low mod. It just means that more than half of them need to be low mod. And one of the other important data points about the program is that it does provide administrative dollars for services like myself and other people that are at the town, that are employed by the town, that may be spending their time and energy working on this program. So it can cover salary and wages, consultants, and other expenses that are needed to implement the program. I thought it would be a good idea to give everybody an understanding of what low and moderate income looks like. This is based on what is called the Trenton Mercer PMSA. It's a principal metropolitan statistic area. So we've got three levels of income here. We've got extremely low at 30% of median, very low, and low. And the primary threshold that everybody, that more than 51% of the participants need to, oh, we got another someone else to add, hold on. The primary threshold is this low income, this 80% of area median income. So that is the benchmark for determining whether or not somebody is an eligible low and moderate income person. There's a bunch of different ways to determine that. You can do it through census information. You can do it through income surveys. You can do it through full-blown income certifications that, and it depends on the program and which one's appropriate, but that just to give you an idea. So a household size of 4, the maximum income to be eligible for assistance under the program is $78,500. Not a lot when you consider that the median income in Princeton is $145,000 or roughly, but it's significant nonetheless. Lots of eligible activities with this program. However, with each of them they come with a separate set of regulations and rules that govern how you can run the program and what you can spend the funding on. But just to give you a real quick rundown of the most popular eligible activities, you can acquire property if you're going to build affordable housing on it. Relocation and demolition that might be a result of an affordable housing project or a community investment's eligible. Rehabilitation of residential structures and even non-residential structures like a YMCA or another community-based building. Public facilities such as water and sewer, street repairs and reconstruction, neighborhood centers, conversion of schools for eligible uses. Those are all eligible as well. Public services, which captures a broad range of almost a dozen or more different kinds of activities, from first-time homebuyer programs to mortgage counseling to daycare, summer camps, any sort of educational programming. Also covers things like legal assistance for people that have foreclosure or eviction issues. Job trainings also under public service. There's usually a cap for how much you can spend on public services because it's a really feel-good activity, right? Because it's one that touches a lot of people, and it tends to be a lot of need, even in a town like Princeton, for these sorts of social services and health related and all those sorts of things, education related. So there's always seem to be need there, and it's very popular funding source. 15% of the annual allocation is allowed to be spent on that. However, with 2020, lots of exceptions in 2020, and the CDBG program has them as well. We're allowed to go over the 15% in 2020 as long as it's a COVID-related project. So we could, if we wanted to, spend a significant amount of dollars. In fact, the budget that we are proposing, the activities that we're proposing with the funds much of them are considered public services and would bump into that cap in a normal year. Energy conservation and renewable energy resources also available as an eligible activity. And then this last bullet's an attempt to capture a wide range of economic development projects. So if the town wanted to invest in a new startup that may be primarily hiring people of relatively low wages, or if a business wants to expand and create some new jobs, those activities would be eligible too. One of the challenges, though, with this, sort of comparing this list and looking at, what you can do and how much of an impact you have, is a relatively small budget. We'll go into it in a little bit more detail, but it's the annual allocation for Princeton under this program in 2020 is only $250,000. That's not going to have a lot of impact on, say, a street reconstruction project or building a community center. So it's you almost have to filter the eligibility list with, like, where can you have a meaningful impact in the community with a relatively small amount of dollars. We also have available to us some money that was awarded under the CARES Act, which we'll go into in a minute, but it actually bumps up the available funds to about $500,000 in Princeton. Oops. Each of the activities that we fund with the program have to meet this test. They either have to serve people of low and moderate income, which we've covered, or you can qualify a project as an elimination of slums and blight, which is relatively rarely used. And even more rarely used up until this year was this last bullet, which is a project that is based on urgent need. And HUD has dramatically scaled back the threshold for documenting a project that is addressing urgent need because of COVID. So they've relaxed this rule a lot. In my 20+ year career, I've never, until this year, I've never done a project under urgent need because of how difficult it is to qualify a project for it. You basically have to show that that the program is a source of last resort and that there is no other funding, not even the ability to bond as a municipality you would even have to make an argument that that wouldn't be available. But like I said, HUD relaxed that dramatically, and it's been really useful for a lot of towns struggling with COVID. Here's a little graphic to show you the consolidated plan process that we're working through right now. The sort of the 12 o'clock through 6 o'clock cover the consolidated plan. We've had a couple of focus group meetings and a previous public hearing to attempt to determine needs and set priorities. And then with that information, we've analyzed the resources and set some goals, and that's what's sort of culminated in the draft of the consolidated plan. And you can see in the center of it is the citizen participation and consultation with the public. That is a key component to the program, as illustrated by the graphic. So at each step of the way, as we're developing plans for the use of these dollars, and as we are programming them and even implementing them, there's multiple points along the way where we would be working with the citizens and making information available to them and soliciting feedback. This is just a graphic to show you the sort of the breadth of the consolidated plan. If you've had a chance to look at the draft, you probably saw a lot of this in the table of contents. The document's relatively significant. If you have taken a look at the document, you might have noticed that there's a lot of data, that there's a lot of tables that were like pre-populated in the document that are blank. And it's a really unique problem I've never run into. And I just wanted to sort of explain that a little bit for anybody that's seen the document. I've tried to address it in the narrative every time we run into a section where there's blank tables. The problem stems from the idea that HUD has developed this computer system that allows the communities to input their consolidated plan into the website and then generate a document, like the Word document that we have on the website, generate a document from that is then available for public review and is a little bit more digestible than this very complex set of tables and pages on the web. As part of that process, they provide data on a number of different subjects for the municipality. The problem is that the municipality merged, the two municipalities merged, and the source of the information that HUD uses to populate the table, to populate all the tables, in fact, is the 2013 American Community Survey. And because of that, we got no data. we have, in fact, the entirety of the consolidated plan was absent data, and where I could, I went into the 2015 American Community Survey and hand transferred data into the tables where I could, but even that was not foolproof, because there were a lot of sections where HUD takes the American Community Survey and then runs it through formulas to come up with yet additional data that's not directly published in the survey. So we had, some very severe limitations as to what we could pull out of the American Community Survey and fill in these gaps. But I just wanted to address that on the outset, because it looks a little disturbing if you go through the plan really quickly and you see pages of blank tables. I apologize for that. I checked in with HUD and there was absolutely no solution to it other than to possibly wait for the census to come out and then to go back and revisit the consolidated plan. And they're suggesting that these tables might repopulate and we might see data maybe a year or year and a half from now that we could then analyze. Maureen, did you have a question or a comment on that? I see you getting close to the screen.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether HUD is going to have any issues with this. If we put this consolidated plan in and it's got all these tables that are blank, it doesn't affect our ability to get this money, correct?
No, the feedback I'm getting is that this is incredibly unique. They have that the staff at the Newark office has never seen something like this before. Because again, when was the last time two towns in New
Right.
Jersey merged?
Yeah.
Was it 17? We're really good at splitting towns up. We're not really good at merging towns together. So the Newark office was totally caught off guard. I actually sent this in as a question to the National Help Desk to see if there was some guidance that they had, and a woman there that's super helpful and knows this stuff really well said, there's nothing they can do at this point. There's no, the data that the sources of data that they have in the system is hard coded, and there's no way to sort of provide an alternate data source other than to do what I did and go in and hand do them. But again, there's limitations with that as well. But so we should not, I don't expect any issues from HUD on the lack of data.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So let's talk money. The first box here is this $242,985. That is we'll call it the formula grant or the entitlement funding that Princeton is to receive. So this is when you think about this program in the future, and you think about you're thinking about other projects where this money might be used. It's this number that our annual allocation is going to grow off of. It tends to fluctuate a little bit here and there. There's, you might have read, in the last change of administration that the new administration, although it's now the current administration, was attempting to zero out the program in its entirety. Well, that actually resulted in a 4% increase in the program for some reason. And we've actually seen some modest increases over the last 3 years. The program actually tends to get cut under Democratic administrations, if you can believe that. Not significantly, but the program has seen some trimmage under the Democratic administrations. So that's the number you want to keep in mind. That's the number that's going to tend to grow. This CARES Act money is very, very unique. Has never happened. There's never been an emergency appropriation through the CDBG program in its 40 plus years of existence. This is all new territory. In fact, there were multiple awards out of the CARES Act. In total, $5 billion was taken out of the CARES Act and pushed through the CDBG program so that to make it available at the local level. So it was basically a strategy to use an existing administrative and regulatory framework to push down funding to the local, county, and state levels to respond to the CARES Act. And this is a good time to mention that the CARES Act funding is limited to 3 different activities. That's the prevention of the spread of COVID-19, in preparing for COVID-19, and responding to COVID-19. And responding can mean a lot of different things. It's basically responding to the impacts of COVID-19, whether they be economic, health related, or what have you. And HUD's done a really interesting thing with these funds. They've issued a lot of guidance and waivers that are very specific to these funds. In fact, there's a 68-page guidance that came out a couple of weeks, almost a month ago now, and there's webinars almost weekly, and there's a whole set of regulations just on the CARES Act funding. But rather than make it very rigid and say these are the eligible activities for the CARES Act funding, they're really leaving it up to the municipalities to say, this is what we're dealing with locally, and this is what we need. This is what we need to use the money for to respond to COVID-19. So kudos to HUD for not doing what grant programs tend to do and try to create little boxes for everything. They really left it up to the towns to figure it out and figure out where it applies the best. The other thing that I want to mention about this is that there is, in addition to these funds here, and by the way, these all total up to $577,000 if you round up. In addition to these funds, the county of Mercer has also received a total of about $1.4 million. That number is actually going to go up to about $2 million in the next couple of weeks. And about 1.1 of that is available to municipalities that include Princeton. So so we have this sort of like double the secondary opportunity to have the program impact people locally. The early conversations I've had with the county is that they intend to use it largely for, if not entirely for, helping people prevent evictions and foreclosure. So if you looked at the plan and noticed that our previous the projects that we're presenting, we have a significant amount of the budget that we're putting into that category. So there's the county is also seeing that as a need. So if we run out of funds, there's also, we can do it in tandem with the county. So it's good to see that they're thinking in the same direction that Princeton is. So one of the things that we have to do in the consolidated plan, and if you noticed in the title and in some of these slides, you'll see it referenced as a 2020-2024 consolidated plan. And the concept here is that we're setting priorities and plans and goals for these funds over a 5-year period. So every 5 years we submit a consolidated plan, and all the intervening years we will submit a much briefer document called an action plan. And it's basically what you would expect. It's a series of projects that you're going to fund with the annual allocation. But it's important that every one of those projects can go back and be held up to the consolidated plan and the priority needs of the consolidated plan to make sure that they jive, right? So that you can't, we've got 5 priority needs listed here. If you wanted to fund a project that was not covered by these 5 needs, the town would have to go back and amend the consolidated plan to create a priority need that covered the new novel project. One of the things that we've attempted to do here is create some flexibility for the town over the 5-year period, and lay the groundwork for projects that may not be funded in this current year, but maybe boil to the top in the intervening years 2 through 5. I'm sorry. So we've attempted to be relatively general here and a high altitude as far as the detail goes, with the idea that this needs to serve us all the way through 2024. And so with these priority needs, we created some program goals, and hopefully this is relatively easy for folks to see on their screens. So hopefully no one's on a phone trying to read this thing. So we've created some goals, and the very first goal is to support households that are being impacted by COVID. The next one is to address the digital divide. Another one is to promote diversity in the housing stock and population. Another is to preserve and protect existing affordable housing. And the final one is to provide a rich array of public services. 2 of these goals came right out of your housing element and fair share plan. And these were the 2 goals that were sort of most aligned with the allowable activities of those 2 goals from the housing element and fair share plan were the 2 goals that were most aligned with the eligible uses of CDBG funds. There were some other goals in there some very good ones, in fact, in the housing element and fair share plan that can't be addressed with CDBG, so they've been left out of the goals of the consolidated plan. And from those goals, we established 4 projects, and they are, I've got one on each screen here. They're not in any particular order, but we'll go through them in the order that we've got presented here. Emergency housing expense assistance. This is basically the concept of helping people with housing expenses that have had an economic impact in their household due to COVID-19. So these funds would be available for someone who attests to a wage or income loss due to the economic crisis of COVID-19, and this program would be available to assist them with rent and utilities, and possibly even mortgage payments as well. our best estimate is that this funding that we have set aside, sorry, I don't have a total, but it's about $320,000, that we expect to be able to serve about 36 people with the maximum amount of assistance that the regulations provide. At this point, we're waiting on some HUD guidance that will allow us to use these funds for arrearage, rent and mortgage. As of right now, the way the regs are written, these are the pre-COVID regs for this use. They are not permitted to pay back rent and back mortgage. They are only permitted to pay ongoing, as sort of like a rental assistance program. We've got some information from HUD that this guidance will come out shortly, that we will be able to pay arrearages, but the key is that no one will be able to receive more than 6 months worth of assistance under the programs. And it's possible that might get waived as well, but based on the 6 months, based on some average rent costs, we're estimating that about 36 people, maybe up to 36 people, I'm sorry, a minimum of 36 people, because we put them down for a full 6 months and an average of about $1,500 per month for rent and utilities. So that's our first project. The next one was a project that came out of some discussions with the Housing Authority about the digital divide is probably the best way to describe it. The lack of reliable Wi-Fi access for people in the Housing Authority, and there's two basic populations that were explained to us as a need. The first one's the students that are attempting to distance learn and participate in school. That's most certainly our first group of people that would be served. The other group is our senior citizens that are unable to that are now being forced to use telemedicine as their primary means of consulting with doctors. So those are the two target populations. And while the Housing Authority was initiated this idea, this would be the sketch for this project is that it might be also available to people that are outside the Housing Authority but are also low and moderate income. So your Griggs Farm, your other affordable housing projects might also be able to access these funds. And with the $72,000 that we've programmed here, we think we may be able to serve as many as 400 people for a year's worth of internet access for those folks. The next activity is the Public Housing Authority has asked for some assistance with some capital improvements that they have there. There's a few boilers on Clay Street that are aging out. That might be a use of these funds. There's also they're also conducting a unit by unit survey of the conditions of each of their units, and they are finding some things that may be more important than that, and they are currently evaluating that, but it sounds like it's either going to be a boiler replacement project on Clay Street or some improvements to some units that have water infiltrating the basement and are causing some obvious mold and air quality issues for residents. And then the last activity is the most boring of them all. It is the administration slice of the pie. And I mentioned earlier that HUD allows us to spend funding on administration, and these are the the 48,000 is the amount of funding that the 48,000 is the amount of funding that is the administrative budget for the entitlement funds, and then the CARES Act funding provides another $66,000 in administrative as well. And that is my quick summary of the consolidated plan. And at this point, I'd like to open it up for any discussion, comments. I know there's a few people have trickled in. It sounds like they may have also experienced the same link issue as a couple of other people to join. What I might do is if you missed the presentation, you're just joining in the last couple of minutes, what what I'll do is I'll stay on, and then I'll run through the slides again. But at this point, maybe we'll open it up to comments. I see a hand raised, and you can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can, very well.
Okay. Hi, I'm Harishi Somayaji. I'm representing Princeton Mutual Aid. I know that we have a number of other Princeton Mutual Aid residents or sorry, participants that are in this call. I just had a couple questions about the first program, the Emergency Housing Expense Assistance. So, this is quite a lot of money, right? $320,000. A question that myself and a lot of other people have is, what is the mechanism by which this money is going to be distributed? And what are the particular requisites for, being eligible for the assistance? We're particularly thinking about our, undocumented neighbors that, routinely, at least, we've had to deal with this a lot in helping them with their housing situations, have routinely faced these kinds of obstacles. So we're wondering about how is the money going to be distributed and what the requisites are.
Yeah, great question. So let's start with the elephant in the room and the undocumented. I mean, this has been every time that we have gotten together, either as a focus group or any of the public hearings, it is the number one issue on everyone's minds. My thinking has come around on this topic, and initially when I met with the town, I was relying on some regulations that basically the challenge with this population is that it is not explicitly permitted in the CDBG regs. It does not say that the population is allowed to benefit from the program. In fact, there's a lot of very similar programs that forbid the assistance to undocumented. However, through the absence of excluding it, there's a national housing coalition that has done a very well-reasoned analysis of the law and some other laws and laid a groundwork that I am now very comfortable with in saying that this assistance can be used for that population. Having said that, it is HUD, and it is this administration that is running HUD, and we are expecting additional guidance on housing assistance out of HUD. I have not heard anything to the contrary, that this might get eliminated completely by a very specific mention. That is not, I don't want to start that rumor. That has not come out, but that as it stands right now, I have a new level of comfort with this activity serving undocumented families, and we do not have anything at HUD that explicitly forbids it. So we are working under an assumption that they would be an eligible recipient of these funds. Going back to the question about eligibility and how to get through that, luckily it's very simple for this. A lot of the housing assistance programs that are available right now require a tremendous amount of information about the household in order to participate. This particular activity is very simple, and it's almost so simple that you may not believe me, but there's a one-page form, and they have to provide their name, address, number of people in their household, and whether or not they make above or below the income limit that corresponds with their household from that chart that we showed you earlier. So if they're a family of 4 and they're making less than $70,000 a year, they are then considered income eligible. The next 2 questions on the survey form cover race and ethnicity, right? And then the last one is a question that says, that asks them to certify that their need for this assistance is due to a wage or income loss from COVID-19. So that's it as far as an application goes. There's one attachment to that application that's necessary, and it's a signed lease. And that is a deal breaker. There is nothing there. That is explicitly in the regulations as a required document. So, and I know that this is a challenge in the undocumented population of having a signed valid lease. Valid's important too, just not you can't have just a signed one that's like, rolling over. It's got to be a valid lease. That's it. That's the level of documentation and information that we need to assist someone. The funding itself does not pass through the family. The funding either goes directly to the utility company where the funds are owed, or directly to the landlord. It's really quite that simple. That we have a lot of latitude about how we actually administer such a program. It sounds like, in talking this over with the folks in Princeton, it sounds as though the path that they are headed in is to retain the services of a local nonprofit to administer the program. Personally, I think it's a great idea. I've seen multiple towns that I work for attempt to roll out one of these programs. And if this isn't something that you're normally doing and providing housing assistance and kind of have that framework and that infrastructure set up, it can be overwhelming, and it can be a serious challenge. So I'm a big fan of the idea of working with experts that are out there and established and doing this, and passing the money through a local agency. Hey, Letitia.
Hi. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
And I think I know the answer to the question, but I thought I would ask it anyway. But you touched on this already. As far as who I already assumed there would be a nonprofit that can manage the funds. But as far as who determines who is going to be the entity that's going to manage the funds and also determine eligibility.
The eligibility is set by the program. There's no opportunity to sort of infuse their own.
Yeah.
It's established. It will be a copy and paste set of eligibility that will then be, put into a contract with that agency.
Yeah.
As far as how that relationship begins, it needs to be done in a manner that is satisfactory to the local purchasing agent. So that, and there's a couple of different options here. The guidance that has come out of HUD with this COVID funding has strongly suggested that municipalities consider using emergency procurement provisions and avoid a long, drawn-out RFP process and basically kind of watering down the impact by allowing time to transpire. So they've put some pretty strong words together to have towns seriously consider using emergency procurement provisions and basically make an award to an agency that they're comfortable with. The other option, obviously, that's on the table would be for the town to issue an RFP and take applications, score them, submit something, and then pass a resolution and all that sort of thing. Well, the resolution is required anyway, but those are the two options that are available, and we don't have a clear path yet on exactly which of the two. At least maybe some folks that are thinking about this more locally have something to chime in about, but as far as I know, there hasn't been a commitment in either path.
Okay, and because I wanted to follow up, especially as far as determining eligibility. Yes, we may have already what the criteria is for eligibility, but whoever's going to be reviewing the applications and determining eligibility, and just for example, you mentioned having a valid lease might be one of them. We all know many in our community are living their living situation. They may be living in the household where they're not on the lease themselves. There's just an agreement. And I'm just using as an example for those who are enrolling in our school district. The school district will accept an affidavit, a notarized affidavit from the lease holder to verify that the individual is living in that household. And, so that's just something that I was wondering about, if we're precluded from having that as an acceptable means of proving eligibility.
Yeah, as it stands right now, and I want to underscore this again, the regulations that we're operating under are pre-COVID. HUD has been retooling a large number of these uses of funds. This particular use to date has not gotten the additional guidance on it, other than some very brief things. I think that's mostly because there's a lot of changes coming, and so that we might see a dramatic shift in how the program looks at those leases. But as it stands right now, the lease needs to be signed, and it needs to be for the individual that's in the household. We might be able to work around it with, so if person A is subleasing from person B, maybe person B is our applicant to the program.
Yeah.
And maybe we can by solving the rent need of person B, we're also solving the rent need of person A. So there could be some ways that we can kind of, manipulate. I don't want to say manipulate, because I think that's unfair, but to work within the rules to serve everyone in the household, right?
Right. I can imagine, especially if we're talking about access to Wi-Fi, that's something, if that household qualifies and the applicant, who's the leaseholder, can apply.
The good news is we don't need a lease for the Wi-Fi project.
Okay.
The lease is only triggered because of the housing assistance.
Okay.
And by the way,
using that as an example, but.
And by the way, if the person doesn't need help with the rent, but they need help with utilities, as long as we got a utility bill in their name, that's all the documentation we need there. So,
Great.
But again, that could be an issue as well. If they're, if they're paying a portion of the utilities and it's in someone else's name, we need to make sure that applicant becomes, or that the person whose name it is in is our applicant to the program, and hopefully we can solve the problem for everybody that's in the household.
Okay, thank you. And I know I wasn't able to participate in all of the meetings, but I'm really happy to see the direction that it's going in.
I'm glad. Thank you. I see the mayor joined us,
Yes.
and let's go to her next.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Loud and
Yeah,
clear.
thanks. Thanks for the presentation, Mark, and for your work on this. I missed the beginning, but heard the good part, so that's good. So I had a question actually about the boring piece of this, which is the administration cost. Is that intended for, like, if we were to employ a nonprofit to administer the rental assistance piece of this, is that intended for that group, or?
It's not.
I just want to.
So it's a good news. I mean, I'm saying no, but the good news is that the money that the nonprofit or organization might need to implement that rental assistance program is an allowable expense of the activity itself. So that, $300 and some odd thousand that we set aside, we can, within that $300,000, we can slice off a portion of it for the nonprofit and their costs to administer the program. The administrative allowance that's in the program is for the higher level kind of reporting, the things like this, the consolidated plan, each year the action plan, taking all the data and putting it back into the system, processing payments, all that sort of day-to-day administrative function that's not programmatic related comes out of the admin budget that the program provides.
Okay.
Maria, how are you?
Fine, how are you, Mark?
Excellent,
Good to see you again.
Likewise.
I have a number of questions. First, regarding the Wi-Fi program, who will be the grant administrator? How is this program going to be administered? And are we looking at not simply paying the bill, I hope, but also the hand-holding and the technical support that these families may need? We're talking about families who are not computer or technically savvy, and I heard stories where Comcast sends them a router and tells them, go ahead, connect it, that's all you need to do. And they open this box, and if they can read the instructions, which are probably just in English, they may not know what to do with it. They may have to call a number when they tell them, find the cable and hook it up. And it's just not happening. I know that the school district is provided for this access, and it's not happening because people don't know what to do with the router when they get it. So what are we doing about this? That's question number one. Do you want me to throw all the questions at you first, or go one by one?
Well, I hope the rest are easy because this one, I don't, let's take this one first. And maybe some others can chime in and talk this through, but this is not something that we've contemplated in our talk of the program. This is still a little bit sketched out, this initiative. We're still trying to figure out exactly what this looks like on the street, like, or in the house. Is this, and maybe somebody from the town has learned, has some updates to pass along, but last we left it, and this is just goes back a couple of days, we were still trying to figure out whether or not we would be placing routers conveniently on the street, conveniently near these houses, and basically creating like a huge hotspot for everybody in the area that would be eligible, that everybody in the area would be able to connect to. That's a possible solution. The other solution is sort of like on a house by house basis. And I feel like that there's, at the very least, there's going to be some people in that situation because, you know, there are going to be people that are not an affordable housing project, not in the housing authority, but that may qualify as low and moderate income. I'm absolutely certain that there's, you know, people in the former borough that are, you know, making less than 80% of area median income. And so there are going to be some situations where we're going to have to, where it's likely that there'll be sort of a house by house a solution to this.
Installation, right?
Yeah. So this is a great thing to add to the discussion about the additional technical support. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I will carry it forward, and we will see if we can either find a local nonprofit to help with, you know, some of the technical assistance, or strike a deal with the internet service provider to see if they are able to you know, make things in multiple languages, and B, make a commitment to be a little bit more user friendly and helpful than it sounds like they have been being so far.
Are you hearing me? Because I'm not hearing you.
Yes. Oh, can you hear me now? Oh.
Well, the second question concerns what Leticia was talking about, but maybe adding a dimension to it is, and the need, particularly in Princeton, we know that that we have many homes where we have 2 and 3 households sharing the rent, which is under the name of one of the 3 households, but not the others. And the need to look at these as, if you will, as one applicant, under the name of whoever has the house, the lease, but also keep in mind that the other households are in the loop, and therefore try to mediate an arrangement between the leaseholder and the other households, and involve the landlord in this arrangement. Some landlords are aware of the situation, others say they are not aware, but maybe others may oppose the arrangement. So there's a variety of situations where it's kind of touchy, and I think we need to have a way to address this with the landlords. Also, when we need to also mediate with the bigger landlords, the institutional landlords, the affordable housing landlords. Many of their tenants need assistance, and we've seen an increase in the number of vacancies in affordable housing, which we think may be related to people who have to vacate because they can't keep up with the rent. And so I think we need to proactively reach out to the landlords of vulnerable families, make them aware of this program, and seek their help in identifying the families that they are experiencing problems, and try to mediate a arrangement where the landlord may perhaps agree to reduce their regular rent for a period of time that would allow us to leverage the funds that we have. It has to be a multi-pronged approach if we want to be as effective as we can with this, I think. And
Yeah, go ahead.
the last question is, could you repeat again what additional funds are expected from the county and when they're going to be available? and how we can maybe anticipate these and in reinforcing these three programs.
Yeah, great questions. So I love the idea of trying to push this marketing through the landlords, because I think when I think traditionally, and I'm just talking in general, not in Princeton necessarily, but traditionally low and moderate income people, poor people, people of color do not apply, or at least likely to apply to programs like these. They just, through multiple factors, and I'll resist my temptation to go on a soapbox about how the federal government caused a lot of the problems that we're dealing with now. But but I do like the idea of trying to work the marketing of the program through the landlords and try to identify those people that might not otherwise reach out, know about the program, know about the assistance that's available. So I think that's a fantastic idea. As far as sort of mediating a solution to whatever housing situation the occupants might be in, I think that's a much more complex and larger issue than I think this activity is attempting to solve. But I think it's certainly worth talking more about and testing ways in which we can be impactful there. And I might want to talk with you more about that and see what and maybe it's something that we do in a later on, or maybe we reprogram some funds. I don't know, but I think there might be a germ of an idea there that we might be able to make work. But I really want to flesh it out and I want to the key is that we want to be successful. And when you're talking about these like systemic, just like problems, that these housing problems that people have had, and these problems go back generations. It's incredibly difficult to just like swoop in and make the sea change that's necessary to sort of bring them up to what we consider to be standards of living and standards of transacting housing. So love to talk more about it. I don't know exactly what it would look like, but let's keep the dialogue going.
Thank you.
On the topic of the last one that you mentioned with the county, I have been in discussions with them about helping them program their funds. I think I mentioned earlier that a lot of these COVID funds are brand new. That there's never been a separate allocation out of the CDBG program aside from the entitlement the entitlement money every year that's based on a formula. What's also unique in the way that money got distributed is the county of Mercer got an allocation. The county of Mercer has never gotten an allocation out of the CDBG program since ever, not once. So that money landed there like a meteor, like literally a letter arrived on August 28th that said, hey, guess what? You got over $1 million. And they don't even know what CDBG stands for. So they're really caught on their heels about all the regulatory sort of pitfalls and steps and things that need to happen. And I'm hopeful that they're going to retain me to help them, push their, program their funds and push it forward. But coordination is going to be absolutely key, because if they roll out a countywide program that offers rental assistance, it is going to get crushed with demand. And it's going to be important for the residents of Princeton to be kind of set up and ready to apply to that assistance, because this is some of the conversations that I've been having with the municipality and strategizing how to optimize all these available funds. It probably makes sense for us to push people to the county program first. Those funds are likely to get exhausted quicker, and then who's ever left or who's ever unserved by the county program, then try to get them into our program at the local level. The funding is about $1.1 million for the entire county. And so that's any municipality in the county, including Trenton, which got probably about $4 million in total from the CDBG program and the CARES Act funding all to itself. So the mandate for this money, this $1.1 million that arrived at the county, is that it has to be available to all the communities in the county. There's another $400,000 allocation in addition to that can only be spent on municipalities. Forgive me for dragging this out, but for municipalities that score less than 250 on this thing called the Municipal Distress Index. And so if you're under, so it's worst to best in rank, the entire state. So there's 500 and some odd entries. And if you're 250 or lower, you can access this $400,000 that's been made available in Mercer County. There's only one community that makes that list that is not an entitlement community. I'm sorry for going into all this like extra detail. Hightstown. Hightstown is the only town where those monies could be spent. Happens to also be a pretty high concentration of undocumented people there as well, which I think bodes well for funding needs there. That Hightstown's, there's a third round of funding that's coming to the tune of about $500,000, and that money is, I'm predicting, is also going to have to be spent in Hightstown unless the state changes the rules for how they distributed it. As far as timing goes, the state is like rolling out an application process right now. I have a feeling that it's going to be very close. The timing is going to be very similar to Princeton in that they will be in a position to start spending funds probably within the next 6 weeks or so. Maybe even sooner, depending on how quickly the state sort of gears up. And the reason I say that is that there are 3 people at the state that are dedicated to rolling out this money, and those 3 people are the budget that they're annually administering is $3 million. Those 3 people, they got their $3 million this year. They also got $37 million under the CARES Act. So I'm thinking that there might be a little bit of an administrative bottleneck at DCA regarding these county allocations. So still a lot to learn, but you know, my conversations with the state have been very positive so far. They seem to be making this very streamlined and user friendly. So I'm optimistic that it's going to be, you know, before the end of the year, we will see the county in a position to be able to roll out its program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Carol, we had one hand that was up prior. I think, Michelle, were you? We'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Carol and then back.
Thanks, Mark. This is great. Thanks for your slides and all this information and all the hard work. I just wanted to go back. I didn't take notes. How much money do we have allocated to the Wi-Fi project? I'll call it the Wi-Fi project. Because I'm just thinking, you know, Maria's point about it being difficult for people to access it if they're doing it individually. Maybe it's something that could be done on a more broad public scale. But I wasn't sure what the funding allocation was.
We have $72,000 set aside for the Wi-Fi project.
Okay, well, that might be something to look into.
And the good news is that that we have the ability to modify these budgets with relatively little, you know, with a resolution and a couple of days of public notice and another public hearing like this. So if we're off by an order of magnitude in either direction, we can shift money around. We can even take money from admin if it looks like we're going to underspend on admin. So there's some flexibility to try to solve the problem.
And then I didn't add it up. We pretty much allocated the $500,000 already in those various programs that
to the penny. Yes.
Okay. nothing to spare. All right. Thank you. Very good.
Before we move on, there's a couple of questions in the chat. One says there's no basement in the housing authority property. There are other properties that beyond there are other units beyond what you know as the housing authority. The housing authority manages 236 properties around Princeton. Larry, if you wanted to ask a follow-up question, you can go ahead and do that. Oh, he's still here. We'll come back and see if Larry wants to add on to that.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The $1,500 came from it was challenge, because if you look at median rent in Princeton, it's not a good. So somehow you have to take median rent and then sort it by people that are. I'm sorry. Let me just read the questions so that everybody understands. So someone asked where the $1,500 in housing assistance per month came from. It was basically a rough guesstimate based on a couple of factors. And what I did was I took the income limit for a 4-person household and figured out what they should be spending on housing expense and kind of backed into it that way. It's really back of the napkin kind of rough estimate. Hopefully we'll get rents that are lower than that, and we'll certainly get some rents that are higher than that, but hopefully it'll all average out to about $1,500 a month.
Mark, we actually have data on that because we ran a relief program for rent and utilities for 22 weeks.
Oh,
and
wow,
our average was
did.
$1,000.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, so we'll be able to help 50% more people with, so that 36 can, maybe go up to 48 if things go our way. Hold on, somebody had their hands up. Oh, Hirikesh, did I pronounce that right? Hirikesh?
Harishi is fine.
Harishi.
Sorry, my full first name there. Oh, sorry. I really gotta mute the notifications. I just had a couple follow-up questions. And so the first one was regarding the third project, so the Public Housing Authority capital improvements. It's about 70,000 allocated to that. What process is going to be used for determining which projects this money is going to be going to? Is there going to be like is there going to be kind of a democratized process where residents of those communities can have input on like what is most pressing? And I would invite Fern and Larry Spruill, if they have particular comments on that, to follow up.
Well, that's absolutely right. And we just did find out about Princeton Housing Authority owning, some houses, because I know all the apartments don't have any basements, but their flat grounds still flood too. So that's a problem. There's a lot of, the deterioration is unbelievable, but it will be fair. I mean, for the people that's been living in those complexes that have been enduring the different conditions, if they can have an input and say on what's going to happen in their world around them.
Most definitely. We originally talked about the boiler project 2 months ago when we started these conversations with the Housing Authority. That was their most pressing, need at the time that they had been able to quantify. And by the way, it's far beyond $70,000. The boiler project is about $250,000 to do all the boilers that are needed. This is if they did spend it on the boilers, it might only buy us one boiler for those Clay Street properties. But as this was sort of moving along, they're realizing that the boilers are technically working, so it may be in their best interest to address things that are sort of a more pressing health and safety issue for residents than just sort of energy efficiency and better hot water. So
we're the sewage backup. They have sewage backup constantly.
You mentioned it before, yeah.
That should definitely be addressed. And the one house that it does it to, when you step out the door, you're right there in it. So those are the things that I don't know who writes you or who fills out the paperwork to tell you what needs to be done, and I don't know exactly what is being delivered to you. But there's a lot of things that if we should go and look at.
Yeah, in the conversations I've had with the municipality, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it sounds like that the CDBG program in the long term is going to be a great partner with the Housing Authority in a way for them to leverage the little bit of money that they do have and address some needs that are been neglected for many, many years in some situations. So it's a perfect partnership for the program to work with the Housing Authority because their residents are exclusively low and moderate income, and they have been severely underfunded by the Department of Housing and Urban Development for many, many years. And it is the more that we can do to, reduce their cost and energy efficiency and improve health and safety is a win all the way around. So I think if this were a normal year, and I'm just speculating, there's other people here from the municipality that can chime in, but if this were a normal year, I think that you would see a large portion of this budget directed at the Housing Authority capital improvements. Just because of how much need there is there, I think. But COVID is been a game changer for a lot of things, and I think it's caused the town's looking at a housing crisis right now that extends beyond the Housing Authority, and a lot of municipalities are sort of struggling with how to deal with this tsunami of evictions that is likely to happen over the next 3 to 6 months. It's really about the highest and best use of the funds, and there's no simple formula that can just spit that out for you. This is it's a dynamic thing. It's constantly changing, and I pledge to you this, that the funding is being informed by a process here at the municipality, and the Housing Authority is going to have a chance to sort of fine tune where exactly the highest and best use of the $70,000 we were able to carve out for them will go.
Okay.
And I would encourage any residents of the Housing Authority to make any particular projects, well heard by them.
And we have to reach out to them, because they're not really a part of the forum. So if we can, in our virtual way, reach out to the people so that they know, because we're making decisions that they're not a part of.
They have been on. I've spent more time with representatives of the Housing Authority on the phone. Yeah, so I've spoken to board members, managing folks, technical people. Yeah, they've been very interactive in this process. And
yes, but the tenants are mostly important. They're the ones at the end of the day has to go inside those doors and close them. They have to go to bed. So.
Well said. Very well said. I see a lot of heads nodding, so I think we're all in agreement there. All right, there's a lot of other questions. Allie, you want to go?
Just a follow-up question. What is the process right now? I'd like a little bit more clarity as to when, say, if we were, what's happening next? When are the funds going to be administered? But what's the process for citizen engagement? Because it sounds like you've had a lot of conversations with other groups in the municipality, and this proposal has kind of come to, at least me, very different, or at least it wasn't as sure or secure from our first conversation that we had, or at least maybe the second one that we had back in August. And it sounded back then that there was a lot more flexibility that maybe could happen. And now suddenly it's like, okay, here are the things that we're going to do. And it feels like, where was the, that follow-up discussion? And my sense is that these 5 things are relatively flexible and there's freedom within those. But I'm just curious, at what point do you, to clarify that kind of process for me, going forward and kind of maybe in the past?
Yeah, the process is HUD allows municipalities to find the approach that serves them best on a program like this. I think one of the challenges to a new municipality into this that's entering this program like Princeton is that you have to build this like sort of participation as an ongoing thing, and it is and because this is our very first year, where there's a lot of input and there's a lot of lessons learned, and I think there's going to be a lot of refinement on the public participation process throughout this, that it will continue throughout this. But the projects were born based on a recognized need that has been expressed by not only members of the public, but as I mentioned, the Housing Authority, staff people at Princeton that are dealing and answering phones on a daily basis from people that are, that are suffering and having issues. And then the elected officials, of course, are also weighed in heavily on how how this allocation of funding would work. But there was a lot of reliance on me to sort of help, distill all this down and present some budgets and a couple of different scenarios that seem to be the most impactful possible, with what's really a very small amount of money when you think about the larger problem on a large scale. It is this all sounds like a lot of money, but this will go extremely fast the day that you open up the application process. I had a client that attempted to set up a program to help 50 people, and they got 250 people on one day, just from once
Yeah,
the
that's why
program
my
was ever done.
sense is that it would have been maybe better for us to think about more, at least some portion of the money for more longer term solutions, because it does feel like this is only going to be, it's going to be necessary because people need it right now, of course. But you know, a lot of the discussions I've seen in Princeton, it stops with we don't have the money. But if we suddenly we get, you know, a lot of money and we seem to be running around a little bit without a kind of concrete and long-term plan around this stuff. Obviously, immediate needs to be helped, but that's kind of my, yeah.
No, I agree with you entirely. I mean, at one point we were talking about simply doing Wi-Fi and rental assistance, and you know, and at one point I realized like we won't have anything that we can like. There won't be anything physical or anything that will last beyond our program year that we can point to. There won't be a building or a site or anything. And you know, and luckily we were able to carve out a little bit of money for the housing authority. So that's a really only like sort of long-term, long-lasting project that's going to, you know, continue to pay dividends. But you're right. These are all kind of like stopgap, you know, shot in the arm kind of, you know, solutions. And you know, the need is dramatic. I know Carol wants, I'm going to let Carol jump in. I know she wants to add onto this topic.
Oh, thanks. Well, I just wanted to say a couple things. I had a question earlier, but in response to this line of talk, you remember that a lot of this money is directly because of COVID, because it is an emergency situation. So the money should go to the emergency situation. So when we talk about, and I think what Mark keeps saying is this is not a lot of money. This is not a lot of money. We're not going to solve huge systemic problems with this amount of money. So if the money, in my opinion, goes to some of these discrete and very urgent needs as a result of a pandemic, then that's where the money should go. That's just my opinion. The question I had is, in the timing, you talked about maybe money coming through in about within 6 weeks. When do you think we'll know whether the money can go to back rent?
We've been promised this additional guidance for about 3 weeks from HUD, and the update I got Tuesday, which is yesterday already.
No, this is
today.
Tuesday.
No, Monday. Yesterday, the update that I got yesterday was that the draft is done of the guidance, and it's being reviewed by attorneys, which means like 6 months, right? We'll have it in about 6 months. No, all joking aside, this is the final step. So the good news is that the heavy lift of the writing's been done, and now it's just about the legal review. So I'm hopeful that this time next week we're going to see it hit the streets.
Great, thanks.
Hey, Letitia, you want to go?
Yes, and mine is not so much of a question, but more of a comment. It's something that became evident, I think, because of COVID, that even though, you know, human services and our affordable housing provider are really, they already have within their network a great communications. They're able to communicate with those that they serve as to what's available and what assistance is available. But I think it became evident that there's many in our community who are in need, who don't know about what resources are available, who don't know about what their rights are, that as far as that, yes, they're eligible for this. And so something that I feel we need to work on, and I don't know what the answer is how are we going to be able to reach everyone who's eligible and who's in need, to make them aware of the resources that are available to them. Because not everybody's on social media, not everyone's going to pick up a flyer that's arrives in their mailbox or by other means. So, you know, like I said, I don't know what the answers are, but I think definitely it's something that we need to be able to address, because there are residents in our community who are in desperate need, but they don't know about what resources are available to them.
Especially our seniors and our shut-ins.
Exactly.
Yeah, great comment. One of the things that I would suggest, and I'm going to be, as this project moves forward and we start working up, you know, policies and procedures and things like that for the rental assistance program, I'm going to strongly encourage that they don't fall into the trap that a lot of these programs are falling into, and that is first come, first serve. That all that does is make assistance available to people that are on social media, that don't have a language barrier, that are, you know, traditionally served and or not underserved by these programs. And I think I don't think it's going to the highest and best use situations in that situation. Instead, I think that the town should come up with some way to prioritize who is, you know, different tiers of prioritization. It could be based on single parent households. That could be a criteria that, you know, maybe there's a set aside for them. You know, in other situations where, you know, we're making sure that the funding is hitting, you know, those people that are traditionally underserved and in the most needy situations. Having said that, it's incredibly difficult to you know, to implement something like that, and very, very challenging. So I don't know if there's an easy answer, but I do know that you know, one of the ways that you can make sure that you're getting a good distribution of dollars among all these different populations is to not use first come, first serve. Allie, did we answer your question? I see your hand still up.
Oh, yes, you did. But I have more suggestions that
I think.
Oh, I'm
I
back.
believe the Princeton Senior Resource Center does the tech classes for the senior folks. So
Well, Allie, if your question is the same that you put in chat, that's an excellent idea. I'm getting a message that my internet is unstable, so hopefully you can all still hear me. But yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea.
I have another question.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I raised my hand. I put a question in the
Oh, I'm
chat.
sorry.
I was going to ask
Not
your
being-
question, Wilma. Like, how is that 72,000 different?
I'm sorry, I missed it, Wilma. My apologies. I heard the school
Okay,
district
I'm
received
just,
a quarter of
you
a
know, and I
million.
think
Yeah.
Ed had a question earlier on also, but this is
Sorry,
very
yeah.
simple thing. I was online, I think it was the Housing Authority, I'm not sure. And Michelle Tuck Ponder announced that there was a $250,000 grant for Wi-Fi. So I'm just clarifying, I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. And is that $72,000 took that into consideration?
Yeah, that was brought up.
Oh.
That came into the conversation a little bit after we had talked about making the commitment, but in our conversations with the folks that are running that program, that program's still going to have gaps, and specifically the Comcast program that's being rolled out will not be able to assist anybody that had I forget but maybe somebody can help me
If you
remember.
already have Comcast,
Yeah.
that $9 or $10 a month, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Wouldn't
yeah.
apply to them.
Right.
But this was something, and I don't know where Princeton Authority, the Housing Authority was getting money for that. But then Michelle announced that $250,000 grant that's going to the school district for Wi-Fi. That's all I can tell you. I just want to get information out there.
Yeah, part of what we expect our funding to be used for is to fill any of those gaps that are left behind with that. We expect their money to be the primary driver, and then we'll be filling in the gaps. And then obviously the seniors aren't part of the school district's plan, so there'll be projects there as well. And if we don't spend all the funding, I have a feeling we could find another project to dedicate it to. So
Exactly. Yeah. So I was thinking if that, the 250 would cover that, then that 72 could go somewhere else. But obviously you considered it. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Ed, please, if you still have a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know, it's been a long time.
Yes. Not so much a question, just I think it's great to hear that the rental assistance portion of this will be available to undocumented folks. I think that is tremendous. I'm sure everybody on this call thinks that that's true as well. So I'm glad to hear that. I just want to give some information out so that people understand that Princeton Community Housing is also running a rent relief fund right now for the residents of Princeton Community Village and Griggs Farm. We've publicized that to those residents. So it is something that we are doing independently and trying to sustain as long as we can. And we appreciate the generosity of the community in that regard. But I guess I'm saying that really just to let everybody know that you know, at this point, we're hoping to sustain our program ourselves with the funds we have and that we've allocated toward it, so that we won't be a drain on this fund, I hope. That's certainly our intent. And so I just wanted to give that information out to folks so that they knew that. Thank you.
Excellent. Larry's got his hand up.
I think he's actually clapping because.
Oh, he is.
Yes, I am clapping. Thank you, Ed.
Well done. Yeah, that's that. I gotta know the difference between a raised hand and clapping, but yeah. Well,
Yeah,
well
and I
done.
should also just mention too, I mean, we are not in the business normally of evicting people, and we are not going to change that philosophy anytime soon. So we're doing everything we can on a very individualized basis with our residents who are facing challenges to make sure that they stay in a stable and safe home.
Very interesting. That's great to hear.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and this is back to Ed. I was hearing part of what he said. Is that rent relief program for those residents in Princeton community housing?
Yes, it is at this point. So that would include Princeton Community Village, Griggs Farm, and any of our properties in town like Shirley Court and John Street.
Thank you.
Sure.
Excellent. Any other questions? What I might suggest doing is if anybody wants to stick around, maybe by show of hands, if anybody wants to stick around, I can run through the slides again. If you came in late, you want to, go back through that again, I'd be happy to go through that and answer another round of questions or whatever. But unless anybody has any other questions, I'll hang out here and continue to chat with folks. But that's this sort of concludes what the purpose of the meeting was about. I know Ali asked earlier about the timing. We have a resolution hopefully on the docket tomorrow night for the municipality to approve the plan and get it submitted to HUD within the next few days. It'll take about 2 weeks for HUD to review the plan and send us a grant agreement for the funds. So that's roughly the time frame. And in the meantime, I'm encouraging the town to start thinking about how it's going to contract for the housing assistance, and we'll obviously be working a lot more on the Wi-Fi issue to see how that will shake out and hit the streets. So those are the sort of the next big milestones.
Thank you, Mark. Great presentation and great dialogue too.
I agree. This has been one of the
Yes.
most meaningful public hearings I've done in a very, very long time. I'm truly appreciative of everybody's time and patience with the technology and for raising their hands and me not recognizing them. I'm very sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quite welcome.
Charo isn't on here anymore, but she put something in the chat about there's no addressing the homelessness issue in Princeton.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, she's not on anymore. So, but she was very concerned about it.
It's a great point. So my history with the homelessness situation in Mercer County goes back a few years. So I was the county homelessness programs are run by an organization or a group of organizations called the Continuum of Care, and it's called the Trenton Mercer Continuum of Care, and it's a countywide initiative where and the primary partners there are the city of Trenton, the county of Mercer, and the state of New Jersey in a more limited capacity. And I was actually the chair of the COC in 2018. So I'm relatively very well familiar with, some of the challenges in the programs and operations of the COC. And I agree with her comment that it is a little troubling that we do not have an identified population of homeless in Princeton. But I think the context that might help understand that a little bit more is that the way in which that is measured is not on a day-to-day basis of like, am I seeing or am I hearing of people that are in a housing crisis or homeless? The whole data set for that declaration of housing or of homelessness in the town is based on this thing that happens every January, and it's called the point in time count. And it is a process by which all the agencies create a massive pool of volunteers, and they spread them out all over the county, and they go to places where they think the homeless are, where they know that they're congregating or where they may be congregating, and they attempt to take a census, in fact, of what the homeless population is like. And to date, as far as I know, there has not been a team deployed to the municipality of Princeton for that count. And so that's something we can certainly work on to see if those, to bring that to their attention, ask them to, sort of interact with that process, maybe even organize a set of volunteers within Princeton to conduct their own portion of it, because it's a volunteer-based, driven process. So there could be a solution for that going forward. But as it stands right now, we don't have a data set that points to a quantifiable portion of a quantifiable number of homeless people in Princeton. And I'll certainly reach back out to Maria, and I would be surprised if she's not already firing off an email to me right now on that topic. Her and I go back a very long time, all the way back to her time in the city of Trenton with Latinas Unitas and that's not the name of the organization, La Def, yeah. So yeah, I'll certainly follow up with her and talk more about it. Everybody knows there's a population there. It's just, it's not quantifiable. It has not been documented.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for pointing out her unanswered question.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
I'm curious.
Alicia, were you going to say something before I interrupted you?
Wilma, I was actually trying to get your comment out there because I had the same question.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, great.
Was it Ali? Did you want to jump on?
I'm curious to know what other towns are doing. If there's anything interesting that other towns might be doing.
Yeah, it's I get that question a lot. And so I'm working, just to give you an idea of the towns that I'm working in right now. I'm doing work in the city of Hoboken, arguably ground zero of COVID. Working in the city of Bethlehem, which is, relative, which had a similar reaction to like South Jersey to the COVID. It took a while for it to really hit there, and a whole bunch of towns in between, like city of Plainfield. Just started doing some work for them, but I'm also have my ear to the ground of virtually of a large number of the projects and plans that are coming out to spend these COVID dollars. And honestly, the most towns are, I hesitate to use the word squandering it, but are spending these dollars on assisting businesses with very small grants, with the hopes that like a $4,000 or a $5,000 grant is somehow going to magically solve a 9-month economic crisis, or we don't even know. We don't even know what the end of this, what this is going to look like. I mean, we're trending in the right direction, but there's a very large number of the towns are spending like a sizable portion of their funding on direct assistance to businesses. And the other problem with those programs is that their demand is far greater, like to exponential levels, than the programs can serve. So it's, I haven't seen, it's so soon, it's so too early to tell whether or not these dollars are having any measurable impact on these situations, but it is probably the most popular use of the funds. The other one that's really popular and kind of innovative is Hoboken's got this program set up to help with meal deliveries. So early on in the outbreak, there was a senior building there where a couple of people tested, like right near each other, like tested within a couple of days of each other as positive. And they were immediately concerned about, okay, there's an entire building of seniors here. We're not sure how easily this thing is going to spread. Our best bet is to set up a meal delivery program to prevent them from, to keep, so that they don't have to go out and walk through the common areas of the building and basically potentially expose themselves to the virus. So they've set up a really cool food delivery program that uses a restaurant for the food preparation as sort of an economic driver on the food preparation, and then Meals on Wheels is doing the shuttling of the food around, all with an intent to serve and help the seniors stay safe. Another really cool use of the funds that I haven't seen anybody try yet or propose, it's actually in one of the examples, is to use the money to pay tuition of low and moderate income people to get trained to be in the medical field, so that they can be frontline workers in the event that we see, this all pop up again.
Yeah, I find that fascinating because I would love to see more like gainful employment in Princeton, like for people who are living in low income situations, so that they can actually afford to live in this town. My sense is there's not like Princeton employment here. Like back in the day, you'd be a mechanic, you would have stuff but it seems like there's just not job opportunity at least not well-paying job opportunity in Princeton for people who live in affordable housing here. That idea sounds really cool.
Yeah, I love the ones that have to tick multiple boxes. Yes, it's addressing economic loss due to COVID, but it's allowing somebody who's maybe sitting home anyway to do distance learning. Thomas Edison has, a stellar distance learning program for nurses, one of the best around as far as I know. And it would be a really easy connection to be able to say, okay, we can pay some tuition for people to, go through the program. Dying to try to find somebody to run one of those.
Can you connect that through on the job side and have jobs that can only be held by Princeton residents, or is it only work on the tuition side?
It could, the trick though to qualify for an economic development project is that the business entity has to show a growth in jobs. And if you can provide funding that could help them expand and create those new jobs, you could certainly write into an agreement that you have to give municipal residents the first crack at it, or at least give priority to people that are from the town. I think that's possible.
Good show. Along that same line, I had a question relative to the support for students in medical fields. Is that limited to your entry-level like positions, your transportation, your nurses, non-resident nurses, or does it go all the way into anybody who might want to go on to medicals or is currently in medical school?
Well, the number one criteria is that the person has to be in low and moderate income to participate, right? So we got that requirement for anybody that would participate in such a program. The guidance from HUD doesn't go into the finer details of it. The only language that they gave us on this is that the end result has to be a field that is in demand. So you need to be able to go to the local hospitals or regional hospitals and say, where are the gaps in, if this thing were to flare back up next spring in a large way, where do you predict the gaps are going to be personnel wise? And then it would be up to the program to sort of funnel people in that direction as far as the education goes to try to fill that gap. That would be our, our goal would be to make a match between a need and this funding.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, going off of the food delivery idea, I mean, obviously Uber Eats and stuff like that is going to be even more in demand now because people aren't going in. I wonder if there is a way to connect that to local businesses and somehow employ people in affordable housing to do that driving, and the town would be able to pay for it. Or at least this money might be able to help that. But just, I'm spitballing a little bit, but.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. There's been some talk about that because when Hoboken first had the sort of the need for food, at first that seemed like it was going to be it might be a viable way to do it, but the scale was all wrong. It became too cost prohibitive if we're doing it in ones and twos. And it worked much better on we're at a building scale for that. So I haven't really looked at it much from like an economic development side, but that's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, like local Princeton businesses are their food gets delivered, not all, but some through a local Princeton delivery group that's affordable housing, something like that. I would be interested.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Start a business that's like Uber Eats, but have it populated or have it run by low and moderate income people. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
If I could just jump in here, sorry, I've had a question in the chat for quite a while now. So just real quick, could you go into, I know that there was some discussion about like how much aid is available at the state level. I think it's like you said 3 million ordinarily, and then 37 million from the CARES Act or something like that. Could you like just talk about how much aid there is and for what specifically and for whom?
Yeah, all this funding goes back to those three activities that we talked about before: preventing the spread of, preparing for, and responding to COVID-19. Those are all of the dollars have to tick one of those three boxes. The funding that's available at the state level is probably to the order of 75 to maybe even $100 million in total. The $30 million that I talked about was simply the money that came through the state to be distributed locally, right? So I was looking at, just by chance, I was looking at today I was looking at the amount of money that the city of Houston got from the CARES Act, $77 million in total, just the city of Houston. And that covers all the CDBG money that we're talking about and a couple other sister programs. However, the funding that's available to the residents of Princeton is limited to what we've talked about today, both the money that's local, the money at the county, and the state itself has been rolling out a couple of programs to help with rental assistance, and they've rolled out a couple of programs to help with businesses as well. As far as I know, those two state-run programs are the only COVID programs that are touching like individuals and families. The rest of it is being spent on things like, basic PPE. Some towns are spending their COVID dollars on creating outdoor eating spaces for restaurants so that they can increase their numbers, affectionately known as streeteries. And so I have a town that's, they've taken a park and they've turned it into, put a tent above it and turned it into like a community place to sit down and have a meal that you take out from one of the restaurants that are nearby. So there's a wide variety of money that's being spent by these OEM offices and the offices of emergency management around the state on things like overtime for various emergency services, PPE for those services, making their systems and processes a little bit more COVID resilient, and whether that's plexiglass or other engineered products to separate themselves from the public. But as far as the money that's available to help, residents and the situations that they're facing, it's really limited to the funding that we're talking about today and those two programs that rolled out for landlords to participate in and for businesses. And as a matter of fact, I think one of the landlord program just had a round that opened today. I just saw notice of it this morning. There was like I don't think that there was any early advance warning of it, but it was a rental assistance program that came out today.
Yeah, just to follow up real quick. So the rental assistance program on the state level, that's something that landlords are. It goes through the landlords, like they would have to apply for this rental assistance.
Yeah, and it's limited. It's very limited about the sort of the unit structure. So the rental unit, the building itself has to have more than 3 units in it in order to be eligible to participate in the state's program. So it leaves a tremendous number of landlords in a gap that don't have a solution. So hopefully the municipalities program will solve some of that, addressing it through the tenant rather than the landlord. So yeah. Ali, if you put your email in chat, I will send you a link to that program. Or you can message me directly if you don't want to share it with everybody.
Mark, just a quick backup. What the 3 areas that prevention of the spread of and
Prevent, prepare, respond.
Thank you.
Just want to ask you, is that rental assistance program you mentioned, isn't that the one that came out about a month ago? Or is this a new one?
It's a second round of the one that came out about a month ago.
Oh, so what is, I remember it was 3 to 10 units, something
Yep.
like that.
Same. It's the same.
So they're doing it a second one?
Yeah, they got crushed with applications.
Yeah, I can imagine. I wonder, I wonder if any of our landlords applied for that here in Princeton.
I
Does
don't
anybody
know, but I have spoken to the program and they are willing to share who, the state is willing to share who has participated in the program, so that we can make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. So if someone were to apply to our program, we can look up their landlord, get their landlord's name, run it by the folks at the state, and they will give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down as to whether or not that landlord participated. And if they did, what the address was and what the unit number was, and then we can make sure that we don't have situations of double dipping.
I just want to say that that's incredibly valuable, especially as someone that, you know, helps manage along with, you know, Ollie and Erlene and basically everybody in here. We're trying to, you know, maintain contact with tenants and residents of Princeton, and if we are able to like ascertain that, oh, you know, this landlord in particular received funding through the state for this program, we could use that as really, really valuable leverage to, you know, convince them to take like a rent, a massive like rent reduction, or maybe even a partial cancellation or something. Like a, you know, bring that to the negotiating table.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how what the requirements of the landlord are to the tenants. I mean, it would seem to me that the state would need to see evidence that the landlord has applied the assistance towards the owed rent, and that it's reconciled with the tenant. But I've known some landlords. I worked in Trenton for a while. I know some landlords. I have a feeling some people are out there gaming this right now, trying to figure out a way to collect rent from the tenant and the program. Yeah, hopefully there'll be a check and balance at the eviction level too, so that the county courts are checking, you know, the filing landlord against these programs to see if they got assistance as well. So yeah, there's lots to learn. Are you guys on any of the, I understand that the Office of the Attorney General has been holding calls on this sort of eviction tsunami that we're expecting to see. Anybody been on those calls?
Yeah, there was there was something. I'm on so many of these things, I don't remember. But yeah, it was the Attorney General sponsored. It was kind of your rights regarding, I think it was evictions. But I don't know.
Yeah, I was on a call earlier this week and someone had promised to pass along the information about it. But yeah, it sounds like that there's a lot of discussion going on at the state level, not only about the housing crisis that is looming because of the loss of income, but there's this other phenomenon that's going on where people are hearing about these eviction moratoriums and somehow conflating that into a rent moratorium. And so there are people, there's some evidence. I was talking to somebody just recently that owns a very large building here in Trenton, and they are seeing their rent collections go way down, and it's a senior building where everyone's on a fixed income. So yeah, there could be some like sick people in there and some, you know, some people that are, you know, impacting, maybe they're helping their family who might be in trouble, but that they saw a massive drop off in rent payments once the eviction moratorium, and there's a lot of discussion about the idea that there needs to be a marketing campaign to help people understand that this does not mean that you don't have to pay rent. This, you know, you will need to pay this one day soon. So yeah. So there's like a two-tier problem. There's the people that are truly having an impact and loss of income. And then there's these other people that just think that this is, you know, like a rent holiday.
Get out of jail free card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I shudder to think what our homeless numbers are going to look like nationwide, even in Princeton, 6 months from now, if we're not really careful about how we, you know, the decisions that we make in these next few months.
Do you, so there's been a big push to get rental assistance coming through the Congress. And I don't know whether that would apply to everyone, or was it just apply to people who are in public housing or Section 8 housing? Do you have any idea? Because I just heard that the House is coming up with another version of their original bill, and it has 50 million in there for rental assistance through February.
That's nothing. That's like,
well, I
that's like
know.
2 weeks, two weeks
Right.
worth of one state's rent, probably.
Right, right. Oh,
yeah,
well,
50
but
million is nothing. So the most likely scenario, if they do get something passed, is it will come back through the CDBG program. Some of the guidance and some of the changes that we've seen to the CDBG program is suggesting that was set up in such a way that it will be able to accommodate like a CARES Act 2, like another round of, whether it's COVID-19 or COVID-20 or COVID-21, they're setting up the framework for this to be available in the future. It is very, very likely that if they do get a rent carve out, it will come back through the CDBG program. It is unlikely to serve Section 8 and Public Housing Authority tenants.
Okay,
And it's
so
for
the
one,
opposite. Yeah.
well, think about it for a moment. So if you know, forgive me if you're not familiar with the inner workings of public housing, but your rent is based on your income. So if there's a change, a dramatic change, or really any change in your income beyond what the housing authority expects it to be, you can go into your housing authority administrator's office and you could say, hey, I've lost a job, or hey, I got a new job and my income has gone up or gone down. And they will then adjust the amount of subsidy that they provide, and the amount that you provide will change accordingly, so that you're only paying 30% of your available income.
Oh, right, it's
housing
30%. Right, right. Okay.
The rest of the affordable housing world, as far as the state is concerned, doesn't do it that way. So the Griggs Farm and Princeton Community Housing and all those rental projects are all based on set rent and attempting to find the household that works best with that set rent. So there's no ability to adjust the rent if income changes for the household that's been matched to that unit.
And Mark, that 30% is based against annual as opposed to monthly, or is it in real time? Like today I have a job, tomorrow I don't.
Yeah, it's in real time with the Housing Authority in Section 8. It's in real time. So so what they'll do is they'll do it every year. They recertify you as a tenant of one of these housing projects, and you'll be issued they'll estimate your income, and they will say, this is your portion of rent. If at the end of the year, if they come back at the end of the year and they look over all of your income records and try to recertify you for the next year, they will collect rent due to them that you might not have paid. So if you got a new job and you're making $20,000 a year more, you've got a
they'll adjust on the back end.
Yeah, you got a bill coming your way. So it's really important that you that if you're a housing authority resident or a Section 8 voucher holder, that you stay in very close touch with, and having filled in for a housing administrator that walked off the job once a few years ago, people are very happy to come in and tell you that their income went down. They will come in the day that they lose the job that the income went down, but they're not so quick to come in and tell you that the rent went up, that their income went up. So yeah,
human nature.
Yeah, those. By the way, people that are in housing authorities and have Section 8 vouchers know those regulations better than most of the administrators that run those programs. So yeah, it's very interesting. So no, the long answer is those people will be protected through that formula that they use. So all those people are excluded from rental assistance, and they're excluded from our rental assistance as well.
Okay, got it. Well, I know our housing authority is encouraging, negotiated, payment arrangements, rental agreements. They're trying to, work things out with people. So
that's great.
Nobody's going to get evicted, even after, I would hope, even after whatever moratoriums exist at the state or federal level, that no one is going to get evicted from any of our affordable housing.
It really doesn't make any sense. It would be a detriment. You're creating a homelessness situation. It's lost revenue for the landlord while that eviction takes place. You're destroying the person's credit, so they're now going to be in the gray market for housing you know, they're going to be on Craigslist looking for housing rather than, you know, on Zillow. And when you're in that gray market, all kinds of predatory things happen in that gray market. That, you know, you all know those stories. We don't have to go into any of those details, but it is not a good place to be. And so evictions solves no situations. Forget for the moment that the unit will be vacant for a little while and susceptible in inner cities to someone breaking in, stealing the appliances, ripping all the copper out of it, you know, all those sorts of things as well. So I agree. I'm very hopeful that we see, you know, 0 evictions out of this, but it keeps me up at night thinking about it. That's for sure.
Wait, Ali, I wanted to ask you something.
Sure.
Because from time to time, I've heard that there are landlords in Princeton. They probably filed eviction notices, but people think that they're going to be evicted, that they don't know that they can't be evicted, and that they're leaving or they're fearful, or
Yeah,
is
I mean,
that true?
the sense that I've gotten, I haven't been directly on the people who've been helping with those people, but the sense is that there's harassment and fear from tenants about the actions that landlords might take. And there has been one person who, I don't know if it's an eviction exactly, but the lease was not renewed in late August, and she has 2 kids, and she's now living in a motel basically with her funds dwindling. It's a complicated situation, but that happened. You know, so
Ali,
yeah.
You should direct them to the Mercer County Board of Social Services if they haven't already attempted to go that route.
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated situation because I think she's and
but that has nothing to do with on the one hand, the protections that are available for it doesn't you know have anything to do with her standing in that regard.
Yeah, just like signing a new lease seemed impossible to her.
Yeah, that's BS. You know.
Yeah,
and I'm a witness to that. You know, one thing that is a common conversation in Princeton is we don't have any sort of watchdog process over landlords. No rent control boards, none of that kind of thing that actively pursue. So it's through agencies and opportunities like this that we get most engaged. But in the situation where you have a refusal to sign a lease, there's even guidelines in that if you've been like, if you haven't violated your lease by like not paying your rent or you know just tearing the property up or something, you know, other than that, if they still have to give you a fair access to the extension of that lease.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's really good to know. I have a general question that I don't fully understand. Is affordable housing in Princeton meant to be transitional housing or actual housing that people can spend their lives and grow old in?
Good question.
It's kind of a little bit of both, but it's not meant to be affordable housing in general. You know, at least in Princeton, as is referred to nowadays, follows on the history of the Mount Laurel action that happened all them years ago. All right, and what Mark was saying earlier, impacted, the commonality is impacted by your salary, you know, or income, and in that regard. So that can swing the definition up and down, but they're usually set rates of rents, and it applies to affordable properties that would be for sale, but it would be available to buy as well. And again, where Princeton kind of loopholes the access is the median incomes and guide and what the market for property here is changes how that language is interpreted, even, you know. But yeah, on the other hand, Princeton Housing Authority and there's another emerging group that literally that is the thing that in Princeton Housing Authority, it can be transitional. It's kind of starter place for, you know, families to come in, those that don't have a means and are low income, that's generally there. All All right, Will, do you know the name of the other like emergent housing group that's here in Princeton? That's meant to be just kind of temporary
Housing Initiatives of Princeton.
What
Carol
is it?
Golden's Housing Initiatives of Princeton.
Yeah, that's meant to be temporary housing right up front, Ali. But other than that,
right,
it's
to help
based on the government guidelines or established guidelines for affordable housing.
That's Carol Golden's group. I mean, of course, I only know from anecdotal, and I have friends. I have people who moved into affordable senior housing, and that's where they expect to live the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Princeton Community Village, I think that you move in there because you meet a certain income guideline, but even if your salary increases over time, your rent will increase, and you could live there the rest of your life. It's a lovely development.
Yeah.
We've got these new, as Tommy was saying, Mount Laurel. If you've got a developer putting in an apartment complex like Avalon Bay or what's going to be at Franklin and Maple or the shopping center or whatever, those are, market rate units, but then they're going to be affordable. So just like anyone who would take a market rate unit for however long they would take it, could be 2 years, could be the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. And that's a good point. That's a good point, woman. And the way, for instance, like in the Lolo, they're under the same kind of income guidelines. And you can be there forever, but generally speaking, you'll end up pricing yourself out. As your income increases, your rent goes up, and at some point it becomes kind of ridiculous what can be charged for, what you might have been paying $50 a month for that you're now paying $2,500 a month for. It ain't nothing changed. So
Yeah, so that's a problem, but
Yeah, it's really hard for people that initially qualify for affordable housing to sort of graduate from it, because especially in a town like Princeton, the order of magnitude between an affordable unit income-wise and a market rate unit is massive. It's not going to just be, oh, I got a new job or I got more hours that now I'm in the in the market rate housing market. It's like, I need to hit the lottery. I've got to, you got to go from 35,000 to 350,000, to really make a go of it in a town like Princeton. So it's very rare to see people moving from affordable housing and into market rate housing. It's actually, what's more common than that is someone moving out of an affordable unit into another affordable unit that's larger or in a different area. That's much more common for the movements.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Right. Well, my friend raised her son at Princeton Community Village, lovely home, townhome. For I don't know, she was there 20 years, and then she became in her 60s, and she moved to. This is the opposite. Then she moved to Harriet Bryan, which is for seniors, and she lives in a studio, basically a sort of one bedroom.
Yeah.
But I guess it could go both ways.
I'll leave you.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'll leave you with one fun fact about state affordable housing. On the rental side, you only have to qualify the day that you sign the lease as a low and moderate income household. Your income you could be making $350,000 a year and still get in most affordable housing in around the state. It's only those towns, and I think Princeton might be one of them, that does an annual recertification.
Yeah.
That's not on the law. That's not in the books. It's actually a more restrictive ordinance that I think South Brunswick is probably the first town to do it. And then Freehold and a few other towns followed suit. And I think Princeton's one of them. But for the most part, you could, most of the units around the state, you could be making $350,000 10 years later and still be living in an affordable unit.
Like a rent-controlled apartment in the city. When you're in, you're in.
That's Mount Laurel. Those are Mount Laurel.
Yeah. Mount Laurel is mostly about access, and access has rules, all right, and equity originally, all right, because it was also about changing the kind of racial dynamics in communities, things like that. All right, so
Okay,
establishment
interesting.
pushback.
That's
And
well
the
said,
other
Tommy.
side of it, any kind of government regulated programs, I've always screamed and hollered about the stats are never in line with the real time existence, the cost of living. All right. And some damn stat that came out of DC, you know, as a guideline are always absolutely ridiculous. And especially if they're programs of social support, you know, like housing.
I just
Well,
want to
thank you, Mark.
Oh, that does not apply in Princeton. Is that what you're saying?
I'm pretty sure Princeton passed a
Okay.
local ordinance that recertifies each year, but I'm not
Every
100%
year,
sure. Maureen would know. Maureen's,
Okay.
you know.
Maybe we
sets
should
them-
change that. No,
Yeah, we should go after it.
I think it's a great
Sounds
idea.
like it to
I don't
me.
know. It's both.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Thank
it's,
y'all.
those people are not moving into another unit in Princeton. If you know, increase their rent or don't offer them a lease renewal, you know, you could be creating a little bit of a housing issue for them as well. So I don't know. It sort of cuts both ways.
Right.
But yeah, I'll ask Maureen about it next time I talk to her.
Mark, thank you so much, really, and for hanging in there.
Oh, you're welcome.
I've learned a lot.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
great. I really appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
Okay.
My pleasure. Thank you
Bye.
both. And thank you all.
Guys.
Cheers. Have a
Bye.
good night.
Bye.